One way to measure how concentrated or how monopolized an industry may be is through the usage of concentration ratios. And concentration ratios is just telling us exactly what share of industry sales or market share is going to be accounted for by the largest firms within the industry. Typically the top 4 or top 8, but that number can change depending on the needs that we have. So let's take a look at the concentration ratio and see how we calculate it out. So here, the concentration ratio. Concentration ratio. And the concentration ratio, as we've already said, this is the share of industry shipments or sales accounted for the top X firms. So share of industry shipments, and shipments means just in terms of quantity, we can say it's sales or market share. So industry shipments or sales. If we just wanted to be a little bit more general, we could say market share, accounted for by the top X firms. Accounted for by the top X firms. And X here can be any random number. It can be the top 4 firms, it can be the top 8 firms. Really just depends on what our needs are going to be. So let's go ahead and see an example of this concentration ratio in action. First, suppose that we have 2 industries. We have industry 1 and then industry 2. Industry 1 and then industry 2. Industry 2. And in each of these industries, we want to see exactly which one is going to be more concentrated or more monopolized. And each of these industries has 5 firms. There's firm 1, there's firm 2, firm 3, firm 4, and firm 5. Very boring right here. Firm 5, so not giving them any special names, but we have 5 firms in each of these particular industries. And each of them has their own market share. So MS in this instance is going to be shorthand for market share. Exactly how much market share do each of these firms take up in their respective industry? For industry number 1, suppose that we're given these numbers: 10, 20, 50, 5, and then 15. And for industry number 2, we have 25, we have 5, 25, 25, and then 20. So here, what did these numbers mean for us? It says that for industry number 1, firm 1 has 10% of the market share. Firm 2 has 20%, firm 3 has 50%, firm 4 has 5%, and firm 5 has 15%. And the same interpretation goes for industry number 2. Now we want to go ahead and find the concentration ratio, say, for the top 4 firms. So anytime we want to denote shorthand for the top X firms, we just use CRX. So CR4 in this instance, because we want to go ahead and see exactly the top 4 firms, exactly how much do the top 4 firms take up in market share or sales for each of these industries. For industry number 1, what should we do? All we really need to do is identify the top 4 firms in terms of market share. So we want to go ahead and choose the highest numbers for each of these percentages. So highest number is 50, we'll take that. We'll take 20, we'll take 15, and then we'll also take 10. So we want to go ahead and choose the highest numbers, take them from highest to lowest. So concentration ratio 4 right here is just going to be the sum of all these numbers. 50 plus 20 plus 15 plus 10. And when we add up all those numbers, that'll give us a 95. So that tells us that for industry number 1, the top 4 firms account for 95% of the industry's market share or sales. Very, very simple interpretation. We can do the same thing for industry number 2. So here for industry number 2, once again, we want to choose the highest or the largest numbers first. Here, it's going to be 25, 25, 25, and then 20. So once again, just don't choose the first 4 numbers that you see. You do want to order them from highest to lowest. When we add these numbers up, we have 25 plus 25 plus 25, and then finally 20 right here. And what do you know? We get the same number, 95. So here in industry number 2, it gives us the same exact concentration ratio. The top 4 firms within this industry have 95% of the market share. So the concentration ratio just gives us a general idea about each of the industry and what percentage of the market shares each firm is going to hold. But it doesn't give us very specific information about each of these firms because it gives us the same number in this instance. In order for us to say a little bit more, we'd have to go take a look closer into detail into exactly each of these firms. Which one of these industries would you consider to be a little bit more monopolized or a little bit more concentrated? You would probably go ahead and say industry one. And industry one, because we notice that the number one firm in this instance takes about 50% of the entire industry's output. While in industry number two, we see it's going to be sort of evenly distributed. So here, the top three firms make up about 25% each of the industry. So 75% of the entire industry is shared among the three firms right here. So we need to go ahead and find a better measure for us to get a little bit better detail, a little bit better predictions and interpretations of exactly how each market is going to be more concentrated or less concentrated. The concentration ratio doesn't give us that type of information, which is why we're going to go ahead and take a look at the second measure, which is a better measure known as a Herfindahl-Hirschman index.